It's time for Comeback Sports with Brandon, the Coach Perry, and Pat, the Shot Caller Flaherty. Here we go.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Comeback Sports. As always, we bring you 10 sports topics from the past week. A lot of hot topics that we want to talk about today. It's a loaded show for this week, folks. As always, my name is Pat, the Shot Caller Flaherty, and I'm joined by my partner, Brandon, the Coach Perry. Brandon, what's happening, my friend?
What's up, Pat? I hope you're having a good week. I hope all the viewers are having a good week. And I know we've got 10 great topics that I know I'm definitely looking forward to getting into, especially these first few.
Yeah, no question, man. We keep thinking that the sports world's going to kind of slow down, but it just keeps heating up, and that's what we're seeing this week. A lot of transactions going on this week, along with a couple other different topics that we're excited to talk about. But folks, if you like this show, Comeback Sports, make sure you go on YouTube, hit subscribe to Comeback Sports, and check out all of our different videos that we got up there from the previous weeks. Also, make sure you follow us on Twitter. You got both our Twitter handles at the bottom of the screen there as well. We always tweet out the links to our live shows every Wednesday night, so make sure you check that out as well. But our first topic is going to be that Blake Griffin was released by the Detroit Pistons, and he got picked up by the Brooklyn Nets. So, Brandon, do you think this is a significant, addition for the Brooklyn Nets now that Blake Griffin is playing with Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving?
So it's turning into the Tampa Bay Nets down there, with that being the location that everybody kind of wants to go to in the NBA right now. Obviously, I'm making a joke about the Tampa Bay Bucks. But yeah, I mean, I thought he might want to go to possibly the Lakers or a different team. So when I saw that he wanted to go to the Brooklyn Nets to join these guys, I got kind of excited, to be honest. I thought obviously it brings more strength to this team, gives this team more depth, makes their front court a lot more exciting, especially if this guy can stay on the court. He's always been an exciting player going back to his days at Oklahoma. And even his days throughout the NBA, it's if he can stay healthy, he's a legit NBA player, and a player that I've always enjoyed watching. So I just think it helps this Nets team definitely secure their hopes of a title even more. And I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but they're going to be looking good going into the playoffs. So they've already been looking good without Blake Griffin. Now you're going to add in a all-star forward into their front court that's going to, like I said, give them a lot of depth, even give them some leadership and a lot of experience. So I think this is just a move that helps the Brooklyn Nets and just makes them more of a powerhouse team right now. And as a fan, I think a lot of us are excited to, see them even get stronger.
I'm happy that Blake Griffin got to a team where he can have a really good chance at winning a title. The Clippers got close for a while with him and Chris Paul and DeAndre Jordan. Doc Rivers was the head coach and back then, and they got close to getting to the Western Conference Finals, but they could never kind of get over that hump. I don't know what kind of player he is anymore. We haven't seen him that much this year. He's not the athletic marvel that he once was. He's not that dynamic all-star caliber player anymore, and I don't know if this is necessarily what the Nets need. Now, I still think Blake Griffin's a valuable player. I think he's going to have spots in games where he can, go on a couple, have a couple of scoring runs or, get up and down the floor. He's a much better shooter than he used to be when he was younger. So I think he's going to help, but I just don't even know if he's even the fourth best player in that team. Right now their starting lineup is without Kevin Durant, but they still have, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Bruce Brown is playing great. Massachusetts, Bruce Brown is playing really well. And also Joe Harris, who's a great shooter. So I don't, Blake Griffin, I think they need a defensive big man who can defend Joel Embiid, a guy who could possibly defend Giannis, could possibly defend Sabonis up in Indiana. So, I don't know if this is necessarily the move they need to make. They're certainly adding talent, but I don't know if this is the kind of guy they need.
I'll agree that he's not going to be able to defensively stop Joel Embiid or Giannis, but I mean, those are arguably two of the best players in the NBA. But it's right for you to bring that up. I mean, he would definitely have to pick up his game defensively, but it might be one of those things where now he's on like you said, a championship team where he's going to just smell that trophy being a possibility, and hopefully he'll pick up his game at this point on the defensive side to be able to add into this Brooklyn Nets team. But I mean, arguably, like you said, I don't think the team even needed him. So I think it was really one of those things where he decided he wanted to go there, and they were like, hey, it helps us out. But at this point, why not? Why not? But they don't really need him. But we'll see how he gels with this team going forward. So next topic, which is a hot one. Honestly, it just came out a few days ago. Jalen Rose is claiming that he's going to be breaking this story over the next week or so about LaMelo getting bluffed out by the Warriors with the number 2 pick, where they claimed they told him they were going to draft him with that number 2 pick, and then they ended up taking James Wiseman instead. What do you think about?
Yeah, in the NBA draft especially, there always seems to be these, promises to players. Like a team will say, if you're still there at 7, we promise that we're gonna take you. If you're a team, why would you ever do that? Especially in the draft where things change rapidly. There's trades. Even at the top of the draft, you might think one team's going to select one player and then they go in a different direction. In the NFL draft a few years ago, everybody thought that, Sam Darnold was going to be the number 1 pick, and then the Browns took Baker Mayfield. So, I don't understand why teams do that. I don't really understand what the Warriors were doing there. I think that it made sense that they drafted Wiseman because the Warriors have, so much perimeter depth and so many good guys in the perimeter that they need a big man. They don't know what's going to happen with Draymond over the next year or two. So I thought it made sense that they took Wiseman. LaMelo's been great in his rookie season. He's probably going to be Rookie of the Year. But I kind of don't see the fit with the Warriors. Now, if you're the Warriors, you can kind of fit anybody into your system, and especially with Klay Thompson out this year, I could see LaMelo playing well with them. But I just don't understand kind of the point of promising a player that you're going to draft them in the draft, unless you have the number 1 pick.
No, I agree, and I think, like you said, it happens a lot often than we realize, where they're kind of communicating with these players before, saying, hey, like you said, if you're there, we're going to take you. But then, the board, like you said, opens up. So I agree with you, and apparently Golden State's board changed fairly quick after that number 1 pick. But I agree with you where I think it fits their team a little bit better getting someone in the front court. And Wiseman's been no slouch. He's been playing really good. He's been under the wing of Draymond Green and really developing this year. So I don't think it's a bad pick by them. I think maybe the PR move they're looking at right now of, promising LaMelo that they were going to pick him and then they didn't, because he's kind of like the hot guy right now. He's definitely going to be the Rookie of the Year. He's been playing extremely good for Charlotte. But I think this is one of those things where I think both teams got what they needed. I think the Charlotte Hornets got a superstar that they've been searching for. And I think, like you said, I think the Warriors got a front court presence that they've really needed. But I'm not going to lie. I think I would have been excited to see, especially once Klay got healthy, seeing Klay, Steph, and LaMelo all on one court at the same time. That would really be, as a fan, that would be exciting basketball. And we've seen teams win with small ball. That Houston Rockets team did just fine playing small ball over the last few years. So it's possible. It just depends on the talent that you kind of put together. But yeah, I think you're right. I think both teams got it. And I think the pick for Wiseman, I think, was the right pick for Golden State.
Yeah, no question. And, a lot of people just had so many questions about LaMelo. I think Golden State, losing Klay Thompson this year, they were just wanted to pick a talent that they thought that could just exceed expectations. There were questions about LaMelo and how he would fit with different teams. So I totally understand why they went with Wiseman there. Our next topic, though, does deal with young basketball players. It just came out this week that there's this new overtime elite league that NBA players are actually going to be funding, where high school kids aged 16 to 18 will have a chance to play in this league, make $100,000 a year. They have to forego their high school eligibility, whenever they enter this league, but they can make $100,000 a year with benefits, and that can set them up for, their future success in professional basketball. Brandon, what, as a coach on both the high school and college level and in football and all the different coaching you've done, Brandon, what do you think of something like this?
I think it's exciting, to be honest. I think it's exciting. As a coach, I honestly don't mind it. I think this is, only going to be for a small elite group of players. So it's not like you're going to be losing, players off your local JV team or anything. But, I don't mind it. You could see like a player maybe like Bronny James forgo his, last season maybe in high school to maybe do something like this, or other exciting players that you've seen in high school right now. And so it's a great opportunity. I'm not going to lie, and I might sound like an old washed up athlete right now, but I wish there was something like this when I was in high school. Give these guys an option. A lot of them are going to go and be a pro at some point, especially if you're an elite player. And I think about most recently where players were coming out of high school and then, going right to play in Europe instead of even going to college. So I think this is a way of keeping our players here in the United States, giving them an option. And I know one of the things is, hey, if they can't, get you drafted going out of this league, that they're going to pay for you to go to college for 4 years. So I personally think this is a win-win for the players. I think it's a win-win for, entertainment, to be honest, too. I think we'll get to see some exciting games. I know they'll definitely be televised. So I'm looking forward to seeing if this can actually take hold and develop. We were talking about right before the show went on, how I was saying how this reminds me of the XFL. And obviously the XFL's kind of been struggling, and they've just started getting it going, and then the pandemic crushed them again. So it's one of those things where I want to see if this can take off the ground, and kind of see where it can go. And if it can take off, it might be a great thing.
Yeah, I think this is, especially for, like you mentioned, the elite basketball players in the country. I think this is something that could definitely be huge and set those players up. And as you mentioned, if they can get a 4-year ride out of it, why not do it anyway? The one question I have is, if you're going to do an entire overtime elite league, how many players do you need? And are there that many elite basketball players in the country? Obviously LeBron would have gone. Bronny James, like you mentioned, LeBron's son, is probably going to be somebody who could be a candidate for that. Carmelo in high school was unbelievable. Of course, like John Wall was great in high school. There's certain guys, but these are all guys that are like, number 1, number 2, number 3 overall picks. So there's some guys that, you don't know that they're that elite until they're seniors or maybe even their freshman year in college. So I'm interested to see how that shakes out. You're grabbing kids from age 16 to 18, where kind of anything can happen in those 3 years. Some guys just physically don't develop till they're 17 or 18 either, or even later. So it's going to be interesting to find out who is technically these elite players. The only thing I hope, and the money's great, I just hope that we've seen. I'm a proponent of high school kids being able to go to the NBA. I think that's fine. The only thing is that, for a LeBron James, for a Kevin Garnett, for some of these other guys straight out of high school, there's guys that come out for the draft and at a high school and then don't get drafted or get drafted late, and the situation just isn't right, and they just never get a chance again. I don't know if overtime elite will even affect that, but I just don't want to see that happen to any of these kids if they get to overtime elite and then think they're going to be a lottery pick right away. So that's the only thing that I worry about. I think the fact that the kids can get money by playing in this league, if they want to play in college, a lot of college scandals happen because kids need money and then they don't have it when they're in college. So if you have these kids making money when they're 17 and 18, they might not need that booster that's offering them, $30,000 or whatever, or offering them a Ferrari to drive around in or whatever they're doing. So that might actually help prevent some of these recruiting scandals across NCAA basketball. So it's going to be interesting how this develops and what kind of effects it's going to have on the basketball world. I think it's going to take some time to really shape up, but it is very interesting to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, you bring up a great topic with boosters paying players, or kind of like, totally different topic, but kind of close. Is Tennessee football paying their players with McDonald's bags. I thought that was funny. But that's just a side note. And then they still suck. They haven't been able to get their team to even be good.
Surprised it was a Chick-fil-A bags.
Yeah, they might want to upgrade. I love McDonald's, so don't take that as a shot to McDonald's. We love you on here.
Yes. If you want to sponsor us.
Exactly. I think you have a right to question, though, like, how many players do you need and how many teams are you going to have? Like, what's the roster size going to be? And, yeah, how many official players are we going to have in this league? And I think you're right to question, is this going to set these kids up for the future? That's what it should be. The goal is to set these guys up for the future for success and not to have an option to fail. So if they can do that, I think that would be great. So hopefully we'll get to see. Hopefully we'll cover it more because there's going to be some more information coming out over this league. This was a really fresh topic. But moving forward to a hot topic that just came out yesterday, and it's a topic that honestly I wish we didn't even have to cover, but it unfortunately seems to keep happening over and over. And I don't think it's just because we're a lot more, aware of what's going on with racial profiling and racial slurs and stuff like that. But the Heat center, Meyers Leonard, when he was playing Call of Duty, dropped an anti-Semitic slur live when thousands of people were watching him. And I just don't get it. I just really don't get it, Pat.
Yeah, I don't want to excuse what he said because it's terrible. Shouldn't be said. He did apologize. I saw that Julian Edelman had something to say about it too. And I didn't read up on it, so I don't want to comment on what Julian Edelman said. We've all played video games, whether it's Madden or FIFA, where we've taken the controller and thrown it across the room. I've done it many times, slammed it against the floor, gotten pissed off, probably said something stupid, not what Meyers Leonard said, but, we've all said dumb things when we're playing video games. So I think whether or not he feels this way, this anti-Semitic, way of thinking, I don't think that's the case, but, he might. Who knows? But I think the bigger thing is if you're a professional athlete, if you're a celebrity, you're playing video games, and you get pissed off when you play video games, don't go on some of these social media apps when you're playing. Be in the confines of your home, by yourself. Nobody's going to hear you. If you get pissed off about something, you can spout off at the mouth about whatever, especially if you don't mean it, then you're by yourself and nobody's going to hear you, So I hope his attitude and his viewpoint about, Jewish people or anything like that isn't, we're not seeing that play out with what he said. But again, I just think anytime you're a professional athlete or a celebrity and you get on social media, if you're not careful, bad things can happen. So I just think players got to be more careful.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these athletes are actually streaming video games at this point now. They've seen how other athletes like Juju Smith-Schuster have kind of expanded their profile by doing it. And so you're starting to see a lot of these athletes do it, and they're getting big followings. But at the same time, like you said, you've now got thousands of people watching everything you say. And as a professional athlete, you already had thousands of people watching everything you say. So now you're just adding in a different crowd. But I honestly, no excuse for what he said. I honestly think it was extremely idiotic and hurtful and hateful. I hope that he really pays a price for it. Obviously, the Miami Heat said he'll be away from the team indefinitely. I wish they said he was suspended from the team indefinitely. That would have been a little bit better wording, and just saying he's going to be away from the team indefinitely. Say that we've suspended Miles Leonard from the team indefinitely until the league investigates this. And there's really not much to investigate it. He did it live on Twitch. I mean, everybody's heard it. Everybody's seen the video. And I did see what Julian Edelman said. And big props to Julian Edelman for always coming out and speaking up against these things and speaking against hate. And I guess I am a little biased, as Julian Edelman's definitely one of my favorite players of all time and definitely one of my favorite Patriots of all time. But he does come out against these all the time. And he said that, I hope that what he said doesn't, reflect his true thinking of Jewish people and the Jewish community. but he opened his hand to him, just like he did when Deshaun Jackson said those anti-Semitic things earlier in the year, and Julian Edelman opened up a hand of friendship and love to him. He did the same thing to Leonard and invited him down for a dinner, a Shabbat dinner, which is, a traditional Jewish dinner. So he's trying to educate this young man into, his hateful speech. And I got to say, Julian Edelman's a better man than I am, because I'd be dishing out a little bit of education in a totally different way. And that'd be by chewing him a new one. And so cheers to Julian Edelman by just opening up this hand of friendship. And like I said, he did it with Deshaun Jackson. He brought Deshaun Jackson to the Holocaust Museum. And I think that's what he should do with Meyers Leonard. I keep messing his name up, and I really don't care, honestly, at this point. Because he's like a B player anyway in the NBA. He's not even that great of a player. I wish I didn't pick this as a subject. But, yeah, I mean, one of the things I tweeted out today was that, I hope he loses endorsements, and I hope I never see him in a Celtics uniform. So I hope that never happens.
Yeah, he's hurt right now, too. So I think it would be easy for Miami to just say, well, we're just going to keep him out a few more games. And not even lose much on the court, like you mentioned. He's not a bad player. He's certainly a rotational player, but he just always seems to be hurt. So they haven't really had him that much this past year. That he didn't play much in the bubble either. So certainly not a significant player for the Heat.
One thing, bringing up the thing about the bubble, and I would just say this has made people question. During the bubble, he was the one and single player on the Miami Heat that didn't take a knee. And so he didn't take a knee for racial justice then in the bubble, and now he's spewing out anti-Semitic slurs now a few months later. Yeah.
For me, I'm not going to tell somebody to either stand or sit, so I don't have a problem with him not kneeling. If he feels like he wants to stand up for the national anthem, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's not, trying to help with racial injustice and trying to help fight racial injustice. But that certainly brought attention to a guy who doesn't get a lot of attention on the court. So I totally understand that. I think that's why this is like another thing that Meyers Leonard, who is somebody who you don't see a lot, but you're now hearing about a couple of times because of these couple of things. So I totally understand that part of it. It was a stupid thing to do. It was a really stupid thing to do. These guys got to be smarter. And again, these guys are very young. When I was that age, I did a lot of stupid stuff. These guys have to grow up fast. We're Celtics fans. We see Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and we see how polished these guys are. Not every 22, 23, 24-year-old is like those guys, or, like a LaMelo Ball, who seems to be doing everything right now, or like some of these other guys that are so young in the NBA and so polished on and off the court. So hopefully Meyers Leonard learns from this incident in more ways than one. We're going to switch gears now to the Lynx, where we talked the last couple of weeks about Tiger Woods and his car accident. How some of the players wore red last weekend, 2 weekends ago now, to support Tiger, and we're all happy that he survived. He's not paralyzed. Those are the first two things I think everybody thought about when they saw the car accident. Then people started chiming in on, is he ever going to come back? Well, if he doesn't really ever fully come back to the PGA Tour, some folks have now said, who's going to be that draw? Who's going to be that player that not necessarily is, a great player? There is so much talent on the PGA Tour right now. It's ridiculous. I mean, Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth, Dustin Johnson, Brooks Koepka, but the guy that I think draws people in now that could be the kind of going to carry the torch with Tiger could be Bryson DeChambeau. What do you think about that, Brandon?
I like his game. I think he's one of the best players on the tour. He's won a lot of big events. I just don't know if he's got the personality to carry the tour like Tiger does. Right. So I think that would be the big question mark I have to Bryson DeChambeau and his little special hat that he wears. I think that's what most people kind of recognized him before he won himself a major. I think most people recognize when, you saw him when he was wearing his little hats there. I forgot what they're called. But I just don't know if he has the personality to carry the tour. And I'd be looking for more like guys like, obviously a Rory McIlroy, or a Dustin Johnson or a Brooks Koepka. I think you could get more out of those guys, carrying the tour with their personality, or even a guy like Bubba, man. Bring Bubba back and bring Bubba back into the forefront. I know he hasn't been playing that great recently, so I know most people aren't talking about him. But I don't know if DeChambeau carries that much weight right now. If he wins a couple more majors, he won't need much of a personality to carry the tour. But I think it's different when we're talking about replacing Tiger. I guess that is the topic here. And I don't want to even say that, but stepping in to cover the tour while Tiger's gone, because I think Tiger's going to come back. Honestly, I think Tiger's going to come back and still be reigning supreme until, like you said, he goes to the senior tour. But in the meantime, who's going to be that big draw to watch? And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Tony Finau looking pretty good as well. So I don't know. That's a really good question, Pat.
Yeah, I think DeChambeau's the guy, and there's a couple reasons. One, some of those other guys I think Brooks Koepka's probably the best player on tour. I mean, when it comes to majors, no matter what happens, he can come in there. He could be a robot and just crush the final round. We saw him do it a few weeks ago. I forget the name of the tournament that he was. I don't know. It was a Waste Management Open, or maybe it was one of those other tournaments where he wasn't even in the top 3 or 4 in the final round, but then posted a round in the 60s, and Jordan Spieth and a few other guys couldn't catch up to him. But he doesn't really have this big personality. Dustin Johnson really doesn't have this big personality. I like Rory a lot, but Rory hasn't been playing great, and he doesn't really. Maybe it's just because he's not an American. There's just a couple of things there. Where he's just not this big personality. I mean, I love watching him, but Bryson DeChambeau, you mentioned the Scally Cat. That's what you were talking about before. And that's whatever, I mean, there's some players that dress cool that aren't that great. So, I don't know if that necessarily helps you at all. But one of the most exciting things I saw on Sunday watching the Arnold Palmer Invitational was on number 6, when he angled his drive, where he would hit it over the water, where you had to carry it well over 300 yards. And then I think he carried it about 340, and then it ended up being a 377-yard drive. And that's the type of thing, I know it sounds Happy Gilmore-ish, but that's the type of thing that people want to see. That's so entertaining, on top of being good. When he does stuff like that, a couple of years ago, he's never been a small guy, but he just beefed up, over the last couple of years. And now he's this massive guy that swings to annihilate the golf ball. And one of the biggest reasons why people loved watching Tiger, on top of the fact that he's probably at his best, the greatest player ever, was that Tiger could kill the ball off the tee. So it's not just, your personality, how you dress, whatever you want to say, but playing golf in an entertaining way, on top of being competitive, might be the reason why he's the guy that draws people in. Because he seems like the way that his style of play is actually almost more like Phil Mickelson, in the sense that Tiger was like the machine. He was the assassin. You didn't want him leading on Sunday because he was just gonna step on your throat. Phil Mickelson was the guy that was like the gambler. He took chances. He hit these crazy chip shots and pitch shots that were so fun to watch. He would either try to hit the ball through a tree and get it onto the green, or would go off the tree, left of the fairway. So, I think DeChambeau is almost more like Phil Mickelson, where he's a little bit more of a gambler, takes a few more risks, and that's fun to watch too. And I think he's the type of player that might draw more folks into golf as Tiger is recovering. Because the other thing too is, even when Tiger comes back, he still right now, before he got in the car accident, wasn't playing in a ton of tournaments. It was the majors, it was the players, it was, try to get to the FedEx Cup, and that's about it. And, and a couple of the other bigger tournaments. I know he hosts a tournament as well, but it's not like he was playing in 20 tournaments a year. So you need other guys to draw people in. And I think DeChambeau is one of those guys.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, you're right that they definitely, the tour needs it, because like you said, Tiger doesn't play in enough. So the tour needs somebody else to kind of step up. And what about Phil, though? I mean, I love Phil Mickelson. I mean, he's still playing. I mean, if he could get hot there in certain courses, he lights it up. I love the lefty, so I wouldn't mind seeing that as well. But no, I think you're right. And with that drive that Bryson hit the other day, the crowd went crazy. The crowd went absolutely nuts and crazy. So to bring up your point, I think you're right in that context. Let's move on to fan-controlled football. Topic number 6 tonight. Josh Gordon finding some success on the football field, actually being able to play football and get on the football field and finding some success with the Zappers and joining Johnny Manziel.
Yeah, it's awesome to see Josh Gordon, back out on the football field, doing what he loves. The guy's just had a tough time with substance abuse and addiction, and some people think it's just put down that bottle of alcohol or put down that joint, and it's a chemical imbalance that this guy's dealing with. He just there's some of these folks who are this addicted, and they wake up in the morning and they have to have that substance because they feel awful if they don't. So it's just one of those things where I just hope that somehow Josh can stick somewhere, and maybe just playing in this league is all he needs. It's whatever Josh needs, whatever Josh Gordon, feels best doing. Maybe a league like this with as less pressure and so forth. This is maybe something that will help him, for the rest of his life, depending on what he does here. I'm not sure how much money he's made in the NFL. I mean, he's got, a few $1 million, I think. He's never really gotten that big contract. So I don't know how much. I don't think he's necessarily set for life, but I think he's got enough at the moment. But I'm just happy to see him be successful. Especially he had 2 touchdowns. One was a Hail Mary to win the game, so that's just awesome to see for a guy like Josh Gordon, who's immensely talented, but just unfortunately has that substance abuse problem that's just really tough to kick.
Yeah, I mean, we're watching the Hail Mary catch, and that was from Manziel to Gordon for the game winner for the Zappers. So it clearly shows, I mean, what is that, like quadruple coverage that he beats right there? I can't even tell how many guys are on the field because they have, these crazy rules with indoor football. But, I mean, yeah, it clearly shows that the guy's still got some talent and some ability. And, I mean, this is why I wanted to have topic number 7 next, because it's one of those things where maybe if the NFL's rules weren't so strict to a certain extent that you still might have this guy playing in the NFL and on the field making those plays for an NFL team. So, I mean, I don't know. It's good to see Josh getting on the field. He tweeted out that he was happy, he felt good to get the win, said he hadn't felt anything like that in a long time. Johnny Manziel immediately was tweeting for the Zappers to go and pick him up once he got suspended again. And within days, they did. They went and signed him to a contract, and he said that he was going to be playing football again. So it's just one of those things where I think the fan-controlled football league is kind of taking an advantage of a situation here and being like, this is kind of what we're promoting our league on. And that's what they said with Johnny Manziel, being like, it's a league that is less strict, where you can kind of come in. We're going to have less practices. We're going to kind of just come in and play and have fun and enjoy the game. And so I think that's appealing to a lot of people. It's definitely appealing to me. And so I love seeing these two playing on the field together. And obviously you got some highlight plays out of it. And you can only imagine if they were playing together on a football field. A lot of people I know are going to comment being like, Johnny Manziel could never make an NFL team, yada, yada, yada. Honestly, he really could if he was in the right situation as well. I think that's another great player that you're saying, substance abuse is bigger than most people are either willing to accept or willing to, acknowledge, because it is a big deal. And for Josh Gordon, he said this was something that he's been battling since he was a child. Since he was a child, he's had substance abuse issues because of the situation that he grew up in, and he just grew up in around it. So unfortunately, I think this is like that for a lot of people, where they just don't grow up in the right situation, get on the wrong track, but I don't know. It's just tough. I think I would like to see teams looking to help more instead of just like saying, hey, you're suspended indefinitely, like they've been doing with these guys. But the fan-controlled football league is stepping up and saying, hey, we'll sign you, and hopefully they're going to help them as well, because I think that's a big deal, right?
Yeah, definitely. And you're right. I mean, if this is an alternative league that players are going to want to go to when they don't have to worry about some of the restrictions that the NFL has or rules that the NFL has, guys like Josh Gordon and Johnny Manziel, they're gonna bring eyeballs to that league. So I think it's great that guys like that can get in there. It's only gonna help the league, no matter what happens, to get legit NFL talent on their field. So I think that's pretty cool. But our next topic is about what you mentioned, Brandon, marijuana in sports, and especially I think we're gonna really talk about the NFL. And should marijuana be legal, and two, what's the NFL's thought process around it not being legal?
Yeah, no, I think like you're right. NFL is kind of probably be the lead in this topic, but I would say even across all professional sports. And in my opinion, I think it's just a little too strict. All right. So, and hear me out on that. I know it promotes things and these people are role models. I'm not saying for the NFL or the NBA to put like a weed logo on next to their logo or like on the football or anything. It's just something that a lot of players use, especially in the NFL, as like an option instead of having to use painkillers or to get a pain shot, like Toradol or anything like that. So I think, even bringing up this guy, Percy Harvin, one of the most exciting players in college football of all time, and then a great player in the NFL himself, had an interview where he said he never played a game, not in high school, not in college, not in the NFL, where he hadn't smoked marijuana before and wasn't high. He never tested positive in the NFL, all right, but yet they catch Josh Gordon repeatedly. So I think it's one of these things where, hey, NFL, how strict is your program where you're not even catching some of these guys that are saying they were playing high every game and not testing positive not once, but then you're catching Josh Gordon repeatedly. So I think my thing is, hey, either step up your testing so you're catching these guys and because you have it as an actual rule, or eliminate that rule and have it as not a banned substance so these guys can use it, especially as an alternative to painkillers, because it's been proven as that it can help people. And obviously we've seen, especially in this country, the opioid addiction is crazy, and the opioid epidemic has killed, I'd say millions of people.
Yep.
So if we can have a safer option for people, and obviously you're seeing that with a lot of states going to medical marijuana. I believe there's like 35 or 37 states out of the 50 that have medical marijuana. And I believe there's 15 to 20 that have recreational laws at this point. So I think we're starting to see it coming down the line that it's going to be legal across the United States sooner than we think, maybe within the next 5 or 10 years, legal in all 50 states. So I think it's one of these things that professional leagues are going to have to start looking at it and seeing, are they going to be able to change this rule over these next coming years, especially the NFL and the NBA, where you're having a lot of your players that are saying that they do use marijuana as either a recreational substance or as an option instead of having to use pain substances. So I'm all for it. I think it's something that they definitely need to explore, and they need to bring in players and interview them and have them be part of the process as well.
Yeah, no question. I'm all for it. I think, when you hear like Ryan Leaf's story, or even, Brett Favre was addicted to painkillers when he was playing with the Packers. And there's been, I'm sure, countless other players that we don't even know about that, maybe got addicted to opioids, or even who knows if they committed suicide or anything, who knows? I think a lot of players do at the NFL level, college level, and even high school level. They get addicted to those things, and then that's bad news. I think the problem, or at least whether it's a problem or an excuse for the NFL to not make it legal, is that, like you mentioned, it's not legal across the country. It's got to be federal in order for the NFL to say, okay, this is now legal in our sport. Because I think what happens is, if Josh Gordon were with the Patriots still, and he was, using marijuana, it's legal here in Massachusetts, and he was living in Massachusetts, he could do it. But another player that's in another state where it's not legal, is that okay for that player to do it there? Because now you're really getting into the law. You're saying this player is breaking the law, but the NFL's okay with it. I think it's crazy that it's not federal. I think marijuana should be legal because of the way that players can use it to deal with the pain. Some folks in who have MS or other ailments that are very painful use it for the pain as well. So I think it just makes sense. And even Gronk talked about using cannabis for things like that too. When he was away from football, he used it, and then he had to stop using it to come back and play for the Bucs. So I think it's important that the NFL does look into this being legal down the line to cope with the pain. But again, the question is, it doesn't have to be federally legal across the country for a league that has teams across the country to then be able to say it's okay for our players to use this, because technically the players are breaking the law in other states where marijuana isn't legal.
Totally, I get that. My one thing would be, I think HGH, so human growth hormone, I think is legal if you have a doctor's prescription for it. But in professional sports, it's still illegal. So I think that's really one of those things where I think these leagues could still say, hey, we're going to have it be legal, even though it's not legal across all 50 states, we're going to just take it off the list of banned substances, and we're not going to actually test for it. So it's, it's not like they're actually saying or promoting it. They're just not going to look for it anymore. So I think it's one of those things where, like you said, Gronk was especially saying that, like, he used cannabis, but he also used a ton of CBD. Yep. And CBD is, the main property that is in cannabis that helps with medical ailments. And you've seen a lot of athletes just use CBD by itself and not cannabis either. So I think that's one of those things where I think all the leagues need to definitely start looking at both, looking at cannabis itself and marijuana, and also looking at CBD by itself and seeing that if they can just take that off the list of banned substances. But moving on, it wouldn't shock me if it came out on this report that Les Miles was smoking some cannabis down at LSU, because he was pretty much doing everything else down at LSU. It came out in that report. What a shocking report about Les Miles, the head coach of, obviously he was formerly Kansas and LSU. But the report was when he was his time at LSU, but it got him fired at Kansas this week. So what do you think about it, Pat? I'm laughing because, like I said, with the joke I just told.
Yeah. Les Miles was obviously a great coach at LSU. I always thought there was something off about him just by the way that he talked to people. And when the reports came out and I was reading about how he was talking to some female, workers for the team, it just didn't shock me. I'm picturing Les Miles doing that, whereas other college coaches, I would be shocked if they were caught in those situations or said things like that. Some of these, college football, college basketball, some of these big time college coaches, because they make so much money for the universities, they get away with murder. I didn't want to use that word, but they get away with murder. And it's because of the money that they make or because of the recruits they can bring in. You look at a guy like Urban Meyer, who was at 3 different Division I, programs, was an awesome coach at all 3 programs. There were national title contenders and won national titles at each, won national titles in Florida, were contenders even at Utah, and then with Alex Smith, and then, later on with Ohio State. So, these guys get away with a lot. And I think now with everything happening in this country, it's trickling down to professional and college sports as well. And we've seen a lot of this with politicians in Hollywood. It's going to happen across the board. And now you're going to see, the good part of all this too is that especially women now have more confidence in coming out and talking about this. And I think, all the gymnasts that came out and talked about Larry Nassar, those incredible women, what they did there, I think that's inspiring other women to come and talk about this stuff. And, what happened with Les Miles, I don't think he physically abused anybody or anything like that, but just the way that he talked to people, he's looked at as a god on that campus, just like Joe Paterno was looked at as a god at Penn State, and these guys are, they're more powerful than any of the administration at the school, just because of the way that they can influence people's attitudes and the way that they think about the school. So they need to not use that power to their advantage to just get what they want, especially when it's dealing with females. So, even if he was just saying weird, stuff, it's still sexual harassment. It's still these types of things that shouldn't be tolerated on a college campus. He's supposed to be leading a group of young men, 18 to 23-year-olds. He should be the example for them. He and the coaching staff should be the ones that are providing the example of what it means to be a man, on top of other people in those players' lives. This is the complete opposite of that. This is showing them how not to be a man. So it doesn't surprise me that Kansas just said, you got to go. Kansas football still needs a lot of help anyway. So, I don't blame them for getting rid of Les Miles. But yeah, it makes total sense to just get him out of there, because I wouldn't be shocked if some reports came out that he talked to people at Kansas that way.
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, hey, if you're liking this show and you're liking what we're talking about, give us a subscribe. Give us a like, because, we're going to have more hot topics like this and great opinions. But yeah, I'm not shocked either. And here's why. I'm going to make another quick joke. But do you remember him eating grass at LSU? Before the game, he would pick up grass and eat it as his pregame ritual. So like you said, this guy is just a little off anyway. So I'm not shocked either. I'm not shocked at some of the stuff he was doing or saying at LSU. And then, it's one of these things too, when you start to win and you start to just think you can do whatever you want sometimes. And I think that's what Les Miles was doing, unfortunately, at LSU, and just going around and thinking it wasn't going to come back to bite him. But he's finding out it came back to bite him even years later when he's coaching for a totally different team. And I think you bring up a great point, how he's supposed to be like the leader of men, and obviously showing these young men, generally most of them are 18 to 22 or 18 to 23 years old, who are obviously still trying to learn how to treat women themselves and, and interacting with these college women every day themselves. So, yeah, they do need someone to actually show them, what's the proper way of doing it and how to be a gentleman and how to actually be a man. So I think that's number one reason why he gets fired, right? Because you're a leader of men and you're actually not doing that, or you're being a poor example. Even Kansas had asked him in his interview, is there anything in your past that is going to embarrass the university? And he said no. And so I don't think, obviously most people would say that in their interview and not to kind of own up to that right away, but it came back to bite him. But on top of that, the guy that asked him that question, the Kansas athletic director, he just got fired today as well. And it's all because he hired Les Miles. And so the school is now cleaning up their reputation and saying, hey, anybody that had a hand in bringing this guy in and not knowing what he did formerly at LSU, and then you bring him here to Jayhawk land, you've got to go now. And so they're looking to clean house at this point and wash their hands of this situation. And I don't blame them. And like you said, I mean, he hasn't done anything good at Kansas. Their team still sucks, and they need to recruit better and they need to play better football. So you haven't seen any results, and the guy gets paid millions of dollars. And I think that's another reason why, like you said, these guys have a lot of pull on these campuses, is obviously the pull and control they have over the fan base, the student base, and the administration, but also the boosters. And the boosters are the ones who bring in the millions and billions of dollars to these programs and to these universities. And sometimes it's directly correlated through the coach. So I think it's one of those things where, I think Kansas made the right decision and just said, we're better off starting off from scratch and finding a better coach and washing our hands of this situation.
Yeah, I mean, they essentially nipped it in the bud and got him out of there. Makes sense. Why let this drag on further? And even let there be a chance that he's on campus right now, so and doing anything else stupid. So I think that was the right move by Kansas, and hopefully other coaches learn from this. I don't see how, over what's happened over the past couple of years, you haven't been able to learn from this yet. But again, if Les Miles can get fired for something from a previous job, then if you're doing something at your job, you could easily get fired. So I think this is a big message to college football coaches as well. And like I said, he didn't necessarily physically, even put his hands on somebody, but just the way that he treated people and the way that he made it uncomfortable for female workers around the team, that's not going to fly. And I think Kansas sent a good message and getting rid of him. Our next topic is actually about staying on the football field, but of course we are Patriots fans. We're still anticipating that big move that's going to happen with the Pats. But I think one move that they did just make was a good one. They traded a 5th-round pick over to the Raiders and got back Trent Brown, the humongous left tackle from the Raiders, who was so good for the Pats back in 2018 when they won the Super Bowl. And he cost, I think, $11 million. I think he reworked his deal for a solid left tackle. That's not a lot of money. It's a good contract, but it's not way over the top for what some of the best left tackles make in the NFL. So I think it's a great move for the Pats. There's also still talk about, are they going to trade Stefan Gilmore for a pick, or what they're going to do there. So I think two things to talk about here: some of the rumors about who the Pats are going to trade, and also how the Trent Brown trade affects the rest of the team down the line.
Well, I'll start with Trent Brown because I think that was a big move, solid move. Thumbs up to the Patriots for going ahead and making that move. The Raiders didn't like the value they were getting. They were paying him $14 million, and he still had 2 years left on his deal. And so this trade actually where he restructures his deal, and it's only a 1-year deal now for $11 million. So if he actually doesn't live up to it, the Patriots can cut bait next year. But I think he's going to live up to it. He played great when he was here in 2018. He always said that he loved being here in New England. He's extremely happy to be back. There was a joke about, one of his friends invited him to a concert, and he said, "Hey, meet me at the Garden." And the guy was meaning Madison Square Garden. Trent Brown went to TD Garden because he loves Boston that much. And he said, "Hey, I went to the real Garden." And I said, "That's what's up, Trent Brown. That's what's up." The Boston Garden, that's what most people remember as, right? Obviously. But I thought that was a great story with him, just about how much he loves New England and how much he loves being on the Patriots. So I think he's going to play a lot better being back in a comfortable situation, a place that he wants to be, a team that he's familiar with, a coaching staff that he's familiar with, a place that he's had success in. And I think this is just a great move by the Patriots to kind of just flip draft picks and to get a great offensive tackle back. And I think this is, a great move to secure your offensive lineup and to protect your quarterback, your future quarterback. And obviously now any, free agent that's maybe thinking about coming to New England, this is a lot more appealing now because you have offensive tackle like Trent Brown protecting you. And instead of last year where, at times Cam Newton was even having to be on the run himself. And so I think this is a great move of securing the line and doing it for minimal at this point and bringing in a great player. And like you said, boy, is this guy huge. One of the biggest players I have ever seen in the NFL. Good luck getting around this guy on the edge. And like I said, the Raiders weren't happy with the value they were getting out of him, but I think we're going to get a lot of value out of him here in New England. And I think the Patriots are going to be happy with it. I'm already happy that they did the move. I'm looking forward to seeing him back in a Patriots uniform. But then the rumor out there is, Stefan Gilmore for Odell Beckham Jr. Would that trade be worth it? Are the Browns willing to do that? Obviously, Odell Beckham is rehabbing his knee right now, and that's a topic that I'd love to do going forward on this show because he is really grinding hard. I've been watching him and Saquon Barkley both training together to rehab their knee injuries. So watch out for both of those guys. And like I said, it's definitely a topic I'm going to pick going forward is their rehab and how they're doing going forward. But I think that's a trade. If the Patriots could go ahead and make that trade, I know I would. I would trade Gilmore for OBJ in a heartbeat, bring in, a great talent. Obviously, we need to upgrade our wide receiver position. And Gilmore is towards the end of his contract, towards the end of a heavy contract, big money contract. He's going to want another big contract. So I think it's just better if maybe you let another team pay him. So even if you trade him for maybe even another superstar wide receiver, I'd be all for it. But at this point, if you were to trade him for OBJ, I'd sign off on that deal right now.
I'll start with OBJ. Guy's a tremendous talent. I think he's been, I don't want to say better behaved in Cleveland. I mean, he hasn't, he's not a bad guy. I think that gets blown out of proportion. But I feel like OBJ, Randy Moss back in the day, Terrell Owens, if you don't have an established quarterback with that guy, he can sometimes really influence a younger quarterback or a less experienced quarterback or a less established quarterback into just forcing him the ball. And sometimes I think that gets quarterbacks in trouble. So that's what I worry about. I think it depends on who the quarterback is for the Patriots. I don't think Cam Newton's the right guy for the Pats, but oddly enough, if they re-sign Cam and bring him back, I actually think he could talk to Odell and he could actually set Odell straight, because Cam's a great, he proved he's a great leader. He's a competitor. He did everything right off the field, and also, really got the respect of the players in the locker room. So I actually think it's whoever the Pats are going to, get in that quarterback spot is really going to determine whether or not they're going to try to go after Odell Beckham Jr. But also, if he plays for Belichick, they might be able to kind of not control him, but, trying to show him what it means to be a professional, I think, is probably the best way to say that, and not try to demand throws all the time. But he's also a great competitor, and he wants to catch the ball. And he can catch any ball that's thrown at him. So it'll be interesting to see if the Pats do that. I have no problem with them trading Stefan Gilmore. As much as I love Stefan Gilmore, he's been awesome as a Patriot. After the first couple of weeks in his first year where we thought he was overpaid, he has been one of the best, if not the best, corners in the NFL. He's tough. He's a great man corner. He can play zone. He can support the run. But I think you're right. I think now that he's in his early 30s and he's making that kind of money, wants another contract. I think it'd make more sense for him to go to a team that's, a corner away from being a contender, a corner away from being a Super Bowl contender. You have teams like the Chiefs and the Bucs who have so many good receivers. Some of the teams in those divisions might want to go after him. So, I have no problem with the Pats trading him, even though I hate to see him go because I love watching him play corner. Love the Trent Brown move. I think the biggest thing now is, what is Trent Brown's signing going to do to the rest of the line? Because, he's going to play left tackle, I think. And then Isaiah Wynn can play guard. So I think what's going to happen is they're going to let Joe Thuney walk. He's looking for a huge contract. Thuney's a great player. He's an all-pro caliber guard. But I think they're going to let him walk. I think Wynn's going to kick over to left guard. And then I think they'll probably sign David Andrews, who's also a free agent. They can maybe sign him to $9 million a year or something, where Thuney's probably going to get 15 or 16. So then you have Brown, Isaiah Wynn at guard, Andrews, Shaq Mason, and then right tackle is going to be interesting because Marcus Cannon's coming back, but Michael Onwenu was awesome last year as a rookie. And Onwenu can also play guard too. So I think, if you have Brown, right now you have 7 guys that are starting caliber offensive linemen for the Pats, like really good linemen. They're not going to keep them all. They're going to let either Thuney walk or Andrews walk or possibly both. But Brown adds to that depth so you can let at least one of those guys walk who's going to try to go after a huge contract. Because I don't think there's a ton of really good offensive linemen on the market this year. So if Thuney's that guy, he might be the top offensive lineman in the market. He's going to get a huge deal. So I think Brown really solidifies your offensive line if you let one of those guys walk, or even if both leave in free agency.
Quickly, to go over that OBJ thing, think about some of these other, like, quote-unquote diva wide receivers that have come into New England and have been fine. Randy Moss, right. Chad Ochocinco.
You had Tom Brady, though.
True.
Had Tom Brady. That's the key, I think.
True. You got me there. True. But it's one of those things where, too, I think we do have to give credit to, and even the McCourty twins were saying it the Patriot way, right? Yeah. They were saying it wasn't all Tom Brady. It did have a lot to do with the coaching staff and the organization. So I don't know. I think it could be a fit. I think anybody could still come here and work out. It's professional sports. But honestly, I just got excited by the offensive line that you were just building up right there and describing. I think if that offensive line comes together, like you just said, I think we could protect the quarterback really well. And I think you could get a great free agent to want to come in to play behind an offensive line like that that's going to be able to protect him. So, yeah, you just got me really excited. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to do at the offensive line position and who they're going to move around, because they definitely got options. And I agree with you. I think when they said they weren't going to tag Joe Thuney, I think that was kind of the move to say, hey, go out to the market and kind of see what money you can get at this point. So we'll see. We'll see going forward. We'll definitely be talking about it on this show. So going forward to our last topic of the night, the Dak deal finally got done. And I'm talking big money deal, $164 million contract with, I believe, $126 million guaranteed. This is the tweet that I put up, and I asked Ben to put it up there, because once I saw that all the guaranteed money, $126 million guaranteed, And $75 million in the first year, like, wow, good Lord. Good for Dak, though.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to say he got overpaid, and
Sure.
Maybe he did. It's right now, it's so tough to figure out, is my quarterback a franchise guy? And I think Dak's like right on that edge. I've always said that Kirk Cousins is the Mendoza line for is your quarterback good or not? If your quarterback's worse than Kirk Cousins, your quarterback's probably not that good. If your quarterback is better than Kirk Cousins, then he's probably a pretty solid quarterback. He's the Mendoza line for quarterbacks. And Kirk Cousins got a massive deal as a free agent. So I think Dak's better than Kirk Cousins, by the way. The thing that I've heard from other folks about talking about, this deal and even about quarterbacks in the NFL in general and giving big deals out. Does your quarterback, when you sign a quarterback to that huge deal and they cost a large percentage of the salary cap, you're going to have other players that are going to walk, whether it's, a really good tackle or a good receiver, tight end. You're going to lose those players in free agency, and you're going to lose a talent level at that position. So if you're going to give this quarterback this kind of money, does the quarterback elevate the rest of the team when maybe the talent isn't quite there? We know throughout his time in New England that Brady did it. Pat Mahomes definitely does it. I think Russell Wilson does it. I think Deshaun Watson does it. So which guys, Aaron Rodgers has certainly done it. Roethlisberger is probably up there as well. Which guys elevate your team when you're not necessarily, having the full, load of talent that you normally would have? So I think that's the question that you have to ask with Dak Prescott. I think the Cowboys also looked at the quarterback landscape and said, who's left? Gardner Minshew, who the Pats might sign. That'd be interesting. Who are you going to try to go after? Roethlisberger staying in Pittsburgh for another year. I don't think the Cowboys have the draft capital to move up to get anybody in the draft. I think they have too many other needs too. So, you have Ezekiel Elliott locked up with a decent amount of money. Amari Cooper's got a decent amount of money. You just drafted CeeDee Lamb, who I thought was the best receiver in the draft last year, and he looks awesome. So you kind of got to win with these guys for the next 3 or 4 years. So I think, the Joneses looked at it and said, you got to secure this quarterback position or else, we're starting over. Because there's really not a guy in free agency right now that's anywhere close to Dak Prescott. So I think this made sense for the Cowboys.
No, I agree. It definitely made sense for the Cowboys. And I've said this on this show many a times. There's not many NFL caliber quarterbacks out there right now. And there's 32 teams that need one. But there's not 32 NFL caliber quarterbacks out there right now. So teams are going to shuffle around to try to make a move to get one. And so I think this was the Cowboys saying, we have a guy that is good for our system, that plays good, like with our players that we have now, like you said, and gives us a chance to kind of try to win now. And I think this is one of those things where, honestly, is he overpaid? Yeah, that's something that somebody could definitely argue, but it goes back to that supply and demand thing that we just talked about even a couple of shows ago. Because honestly, I'd argue, is he a better Cowboy quarterback than Roger Staubach or Troy Aikman? Heck no. But those guys didn't get paid $164 million. It just so happens that he's playing in the era of big contracts. And he's a quarterback, so he's getting paid that big money. And arguably, like I said, is he valued at that much? In my opinion, no. But you did have to go ahead and secure this guy to have a chance to win. And obviously, when we look at the way it breaks down contract-wise, you got Patrick Mahomes at the top making, I believe, $45 million a year. And then now you got Dak coming in second place, making, I believe, $41 million or $40 million a year. And then Deshaun Watson's in third place, making $39 million a year. So in my opinion, Deshaun Watson is of higher value and worth more than Dak Prescott and should be making more money than him. But it's like I said, it's a supply and demand thing. And when Deshaun signed his contract, he signed it before Dak did. So it's just one of those things. But I mean, if you're looking at value, those are the top 3 paid quarterbacks in the NFL currently right now. And like I said, I'd value Patrick Mahomes and Watson over Dak. But I think the Cowboys are looking when before the guy broke his ankle, before Dak Prescott broke his ankle, the team was 4-1. The team was 4-1. They were looking pretty good. He was playing good with Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb. They have one of the best offensive lines in the league. So I think this is just the right move by the Dallas Cowboys. Like I said, when you don't have many NFL caliber quarterbacks out there, this is the right move in securing a guy that gives you the best chance to win right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I think just the amount of money, it's, whatever quarterback is halfway decent and a free agent, they're going to get the big deal. That's then going to reset the market. It's more that the other positional players are now like, we got to start resetting the market at our position. I remember Von Miller, when he got his big deal as a defensive end, he wanted to, raise the level of defensive end pay in the NFL, because he's saying all these quarterbacks are getting money, but I'm the best defensive end in the NFL and I'm not getting, the big time money. So we need to raise the rest of the positions as well. So that's the going rate for quarterbacks, and I think that's what happened with Dak Prescott. He's very good. I don't know if he's great, but like you mentioned, the Cowboys look at the quarterback landscape, and there's not much there that they can sign, and that they really can't move up in the draft. So I think this makes total sense for the Cowboys. I don't like the Cowboys, but I like Dak Prescott. I think he's a good guy. So good for him. Folks, that is going to do it for this week on Comeback Sports. We had a lot of great topics. This was a show with a lot of different sports involved, a lot of different subject matters, so I think you're going to like this one a lot. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube to Comeback Sports. Make sure you like us there as well. And also, make sure you follow us on our Twitter handles. They're at the bottom of the screen. Make sure you check that out. We are on live every Wednesday night. We try to get on 8 o'clock, around 8 o'clock on Wednesday night, so make sure you tune into YouTube. Check that out. You can also check out all our videos after the fact. Our producer Ben Kudo does a great job cutting them up to the different topics, or then cut up into different segments. So you can watch one segment, you can watch a couple segments, or you can watch the entire show. It's all up to you. Just make sure you subscribe on YouTube. It's been a fun one this week, folks. We will see you next time on Comeback Sports. Brandon, have a good week, my friend.
See you, Pat.